This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911, an emergency at sea.
She was in a panic.
An underwater adventure means deep trouble.
This wasn't just a distressed diver. I had a diver that was dying.
Watch as friends take the plunge to save a life.
We're very concerned for her that she might not make it.
Then, hikers get the shock of their lives.
It was just the biggest snake I ever saw.
And a father races for help as the venom takes effect on Rescue 911.
Life should not only be measured by what we get out of it, but also by what we do to help others. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of real heroes whose concern and confidence make a difference on Rescue 911.
We begin on October 11th, 1992, as Jody Farber and a group of friends were enjoying a diving trip off the Florida Keys. Experienced divers, they were all too aware that the sea is not forgiving.
This is an annual event that we come down to Marathon for a 4-day dive trip.
You're clear, Jody.
Mark James and his wife, Pat, had only been married a month.
How's that?
Pat's a very conservative diver. The first day she was a little too scared because of the current. But the second day, we had no reason to believe that anything was going to be out of the usual.
Pat asks my husband, Ken and I, if she could buddy with us that day.
Okay, air on, air.
On this 60-foot dive we were doing, Pat stayed real close to us. This reef was known for its big fish. So Ken decided on this dive that he'd rather take his pole spear with in case he could see a nice big grouper or something good for dinner. I had just checked and made sure that we all were okay, that we all were at 1,000 pounds of air. And I was looking around to see what else there was that I could play with or what else I could take some pictures of. Pat was signaling me that she was out of air. And I just couldn't believe she was out of air because I knew she wasn't. But yet she was in a panic. Her eyes were just as huge as saucers. So you react to that signal. When she got my regulator in her mouth, she was holding on to that with both hands. And she was making a horrible sound under the water. That was a scary sound to hear. I turned to see where Ken was, my husband, because I wanted him to come and assist us. And he had turned his back to us to look at something in the reef. When I turned back to look at Pat, she had passed out. That's when I really knew that this wasn't just a distressed diver. I had a diver that was dying.
When we continue,
I realized it was my life, and then I felt the most incredible feeling of helplessness I've ever felt in my life.
while diving 60 feet below the surface in the Florida Keys, Pat James passed out, leaving her life in the hands of her friend, Jody Farber.
The main thought in my mind at that point was just to get Pat to the surface as fast as I could without us dying or both of us getting bent.
Bob, we got a problem.
Diving instructor Randy Shell heard Jody's cries for help.
Jody was panicking, not so much for fear of herself, but for her buddy.
Get her legs. That's good. Watch that equipment. Watch the equipment. Okay.
I pulled her up on the boat and rolled her over on her side, and then it became very obvious that she had drowned. She was attempting to breathe, even though she was unconscious.
Let's get some help. Let's get these other people up.
After several expulsions of water, she basically regained consciousness just for a minute and screamed for help.
Get some oxygen here. Everybody, what happened, Randy? What's happening? What's going on?
Pat's husband, Mark, heard the commotion and came over.
I realized it was my wife.
Come on, baby, push it up.
She was the most awful gray color I'd ever seen anybody in my life. I was on the edge of just falling apart. And then I felt the most incredible feeling of helplessness I've ever felt in my life.
The captain of the ship radioed to have paramedics meet them at the dock.
Diving side, see firing.
Throughout the 40 minutes it took to get Pat back to shore, they continued to give her oxygen.
Randy and everybody kept saying, oh, you did good, you did good. But my thought was, I did good, but did I bring up a vegetable? Was Pat going to be okay after all that?
Monroe County paramedics Jurgen Nicola and Kathleen Dobbins were waiting to treat Pat.
Okay, what happened?
When we got on the boat, she was curled up in a ball, almost in what I would say a fetal position, and she was breathing, but you could hear that there was bubbles in her lung sounds.
Let's get her on her left side.
It was pretty conclusive that she had a lot of salt water in her lungs, and she wasn't getting enough oxygen into her bloodstream because it was filling up with water.
Okay, all right, Pat.
So in a sense, she was actually almost drowning in her body fluids.
Hey, Pat, how you doing, Pat? Huh?
Her blood pressure was dropping and her pulse was increasing.
All right, good flow. We got a good flow here. I'm gonna tape it down.
Okay.
Pat, how you doing? How you feeling?
We were very concerned for her that she might not make it.
Okay, I'm gonna get Pat on her left side.
Med 6 to Fisherman's Hospital, priority 1.
The hospital gave us a go-ahead to give Lasix, which clears up the lungs so that a patient can breathe better.
Go. You got it. Is it running? She's going into shock.
Okay.
Every paramedic's concern or outcome is to make their patient, I believe, better than when they found them. She was getting worse. She was deteriorating.
A Metro-Dade air rescue helicopter transported Pat to Mercy Hospital in Miami, where she was put in a hyperbaric chamber. Her husband, Mark, rejoined her there.
Right off the bat, I told her I loved her and that I was glad to see she was doing well. And I told her, I said, when all this is over, we're going to sit down and have a good cry together. And we're going to get her back home just as soon as we can.
Pat was released 2 days later without any permanent injuries. The accident had occurred when a new mouthpiece disconnected from a regulator hose and she breathed in water.
I can remember the thought going through my head that I was going to die, that I was never going to see my husband again. We'd only been married 4 weeks. I thought it wasn't fair. I felt so sad and so cheated. And now that we still have a chance to do all these things, I have so much to look forward to.
Mark turned to me when we were on the boat with tears just streaming down his face and said, thank you, thank you. He said, you were the only person that I would have wanted her to have been with when this would have happened, because you saved her life.
Every day I realize that I was incredibly lucky to have Jody with me, that I'm extremely fortunate just to be here today.
Come on, mark it, love. I don't know.
2 months later, Pat went diving again.
The crisis of having to go through this with someone and knowing how close to death she actually was makes me so glad and so happy that we have been given a second chance. And we both know what it takes now to make a good marriage after having been through a couple already for each of us. We believe we were intended to be together.
Next.
As I was running through the woods, he's getting real sleepy and real limp. And then I'm thinking to myself, my God, my son's gonna die right in my arms.
On March 8th, 1992, Nancy DeMorgandy and her husband took their 4 children and some friends to a wooded area near their home in Pinellas Park, Florida. Before the day was over, they discovered that for all its beauty and wonder, nature can also hold some very deadly surprises.
We decided to go on a nature walk to get away from the traffic and the people and just have fun. So off into the woods we went. My husband Daniel always walks a little bit ahead of us. He's got a walking stick he carries and kind of scares off any lizards or anything that us girls might not like around.
All right, careful. We make a lot of noise. Walking through these woods, of course, you're crunching on leaves and breaking branches. We didn't really think that there would be anything out there to really be afraid of.
I agree, I second the motion. It's gorgeous out here.
Beautiful out here, but I'm tired of walking.
I know, I just ate that one.
He's like, eat your heads.
I got something in my shoe. Danny, wait a minute. Jeffrey's got something in his shoe.
I felt a thud or a push on my left leg, like Jean had kicked me, like he wanted to like slide down my leg and walk. And I turned around to throw Jean back up on my hip when I looked at my oldest son, Noah, and he had this look in his eye like just sheer terror. And when I looked at what he was looking at, it was just the biggest snake I ever saw. And it made this sound that goes right down to your spine and just grabs your heart out.
Danny, what is it? Danny!
And I checked Noah. I says, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And then I checked Sean, and I started frisking him from his shoulders, and I came down to his butt.
I was scared, but I didn't understand what had just happened.
Danny, what is it?
I turned around, and I pulled his pants down, and I just saw blood.
I didn't know it was a rattlesnake until I heard the sound. It was like a death horn.
With all of my being, I ran just as hard and as fast as I could because I knew that this is a life and death situation. Because I knew the size of my son, I knew how big the snake was, and I just put just all this anger and frustration and just everything that I had in my body to running to get him to the fire station. buddy. Come on. As I was running through the woods, he's getting real sleepy. He's starting to get real heavy and real limp. And then I'm thinking to myself, my God, my son's going to die right in my arms. Come on. So I was yelling like, please, Lord, just don't let this happen to my son.
Daniel drove Jean to Pinellas Park County Fire Station 36, less than a mile away.
He's been bitten by a rattlesnake. Go.
One of the paramedics on duty that day was Max Melendez.
Right away when I saw the fan marks, I was looking at least 3 inches wide, blood still oozing out. I knew we had a big bad snake. It looked like Dracula just bit him.
Good boy, John.
Breathing okay?
EMT Julie Heinecke was also at the station.
Anytime someone comes in contact with a poisonous snake the size that this one was, you're talking about a good chance of death.
We got help.
What he needed was the antivenom.
Good. Just hold on. If you get ready, put him on the board.
I knew if I didn't get him to the hospital right away,
1, 2, 3.
the little boy would die.
The station had no ambulance. With time running out, Jean was put in a fire truck to be taken to the hospital.
By the time I got out of the woods, I couldn't breathe. I looked down the road, and that's when I saw the fire truck, and I just started running for it.
Nancy!
Sheer terror was going through my mind. All I wanted was to get to Jean, and I couldn't reach him. The harder I ran, the further away the fire truck got. That's when reality hit, that it was a lot worse than I thought. And I really didn't think I'd ever see him again.
Testing 6. Please advise man on north side. He's still breathing.
Stay with us.
I'm sitting there and I'm looking down at Jean, and he takes these 3 heavy sighs, and then his body went totally limp. I mean, I was holding his hand, and I could just feel his life force just like leave his body. That's what it felt like.
A little bit longer.
Okay. Julie, check his legs out.
I just fell to pieces, and I just started screaming, Jean, Jean, don't do this, don't die.
At Humana Hospital North Side, 3-year-old Jean was put under the care of emergency physician Beverly Wilshire.
Antivenom can cause serious allergic reactions, in fact, even death in some instances. So I had to clinically assess the situation and decide, well, should I go ahead and give this without testing it first?
It's okay, sweetie. It's okay.
He looked listless and unresponsive and very ashen in color. The child was in shock.
He's finally live. Okay, here we go.
We checked his blood pressure. He didn't have one. At that point, I knew that things were very, very serious, and we had to get the antivenom in this child.
He's breathing good right now.
I felt that if I hadn't given it as soon as possible, that his chances of survival, he would have died.
Good boy. You're going to be okay.
All the machines around him, all the IVs. I wanted to take the pain for Jean. I wanted to take his place. I couldn't stand to see what he looked like. The more I looked at him, the more I thought I was going to lose him.
Jean was transferred to All Children's Hospital, where he was given additional antivenom and blood transfusions.
As the moments and the hours passed, Jean's blood pressure kept dropping. And it got harder and harder to go in and be with him. The harder they tried to fight the venom, the more the blood pressure dropped, the more the blood broke down, and it got to the point where everything they tried seemed to make him sicker.
After 3 days, the little boy's condition slowly began to improve.
Yes, Mama's boy. The first time Jean asked me if we could go home, I knew he was going to be okay.
2 months later, he has completely recovered.
Jean and my family are the luckiest people in the world. I can't believe that he was so sick. And you look at him today and it's like nothing ever happened. He's so bouncy and full of life that when I look at Jean, my heart just melts.
Hold on. Hold on.
I could never show enough gratitude to the paramedics and the nurses and the doctors. They gave me my baby's life. I thank them, and I love them.
Give him a carrot.
Here, put it on your hand flat like that. Real flat.
There you go.
Real flat.
I did everything humanly possible to save my son, and I know that Max did everything he could, and the hospital did everything they could, but when it all comes down to it, it just wasn't his time to go. Boy.
Step out of the car, please.